Now, when I say God's will, what do we mean by God? Because we have an idea about, everyone has definitions of the words in their vocabulary. And God is a word in a vocabulary that we will have a definition of. In this particular framework, God is impersonal, consciousness at rest in its potential form, that at some point explodes and turns into the whole of the manifestation. So God has become the victim and the perpetrator. God has become the rivers and the trees and the birds and the bees. God has become the whole story. So God's will doesn't mean a separate God looking in, saying you've done well or you haven't done well, or this is what I want to happen next. That would be a notion of God's will when we have this idea of God as a separate entity, which we almost have to have if we see ourselves as a separate entity. If we see that what we are is part and parcel of life, we don't exist outside of life. We were spawned by life. That the sperm and the egg came together and we started to grow. And at a certain point, the heart started pumping and the brain started functioning. And here we are, we're a result of the movement of life. And we never became separate from life. We might have an attitude about ourselves that sees ourselves insulated from life, but that would just be a psychological error. The human is continually growing according to not their will, and continually being affected by life. And how we're affected by life, we only get to know after the fact. So we can't determine how we're going to be affected by life. So there's never been a single moment that we've been separate and insulated from life. So if we come to see ourselves as part of life, everyone else is part of life, then our attitude to the other is one of being brothers and sisters, of being no longer seeing the other as a competitor, an enemy, a rival. And so then it might start to make sense that, oh, God is just, the old idea of God was a notion in my head, a concept of something that may not exist. In fact, the more that we start to see the idea of God that we started with, the more ridiculous we see it as, in hindsight. Say, why on earth would I imagine that to be the type of God that exists? But we also look at, how on earth could I have seen myself as separate from life? It comes to be an absurdity at some point. Like we see how impossible it is for me to be separate from life. Just like in a night dream, the main character of the dream, or any of the characters of the dream, have no independent existence outside of the dream. They can't jump out of the dream and exist outside of the dream. It's very clear from outside that the whole dream and the character are one movement. And we can come to see that of ourself in life. How can we possibly have thought that we were separate from everything else going on? And yet, we know we did.
So, Roger, how does then one know that there was a consciousness at peace, and then there's a big bang or an explosion happened? Where does that knowledge coming from?
Great. Consciousness at rest, right? Not at peace. Yeah, we don't. It's just a concept. Yeah. So as you know in the teaching, it says whatever I say is a concept. Whatever anyone in history has said is a concept. Whatever has been written down is a concept, not the truth. The only truth is the impersonal sense of I am.
That's all we know.
That's the thing that's undeniable. You can't deny that you are right now, that you exist. Not saying you as X, Y, and Z. That's why it's the impersonal sense of existence. This is undeniable. You close your eyes in meditation, and what's left when a lot of the content falls away is this undeniable sense of existence. What exists is not informed. We're not informed in the impersonal sense of I am. It doesn't say what exists. It doesn't say where it comes from. But the undeniable thing that it does say is I am. Not as a word or as a thought, but as an undeniable immanence, what you could call presence, existence, isness, I amness, beingness. And someone might hear this and say, I don't know, I don't know what this I am, and I don't know this undeniable sense of existence. And we all do, it's just that it's so ever present that we haven't really recognized it. And we also tend to think that when I recognize it, it's going to be something spectacular, whereas it's actually something very sort of ordinary. And if I ask you, especially if you close your eyes, or for me, it's more pertinent if you close your eyes and I ask you a question, and I say, don't answer the question from your intellect, but answer the question from your direct experience, which means become really present with the experience and see if it tells you the answer. And the question is, are you dead? And if we are present with the experience, the obvious response, as far as I can tell, is no, I'm not dead. I am, or I'm alive. I is, I am. That's in the background, there is, and we might be looking for it, thinking, where is it? It's that sense of presence. It's so fundamental in daily experience that we've missed it. Which is why all the spiritual teachings are saying, you're looking for something that's right here. And you're looking out there, where am I going to find? Where is it? The same with God. We're looking for union with God, and we're waiting for this union with God as if it's going to, some big event that suddenly when it happens, the angels are going to come down and fireworks and all this. And one day we might realize that the very consciousness or awareness that is not separate from that presence, the very consciousness that is functioning through us, what I referred to as personal consciousness, or the consciousness of the personal consciousness experience, that which is functioning through us is the consciousness of Source. That is functioning through a particular body-mind organism as a vehicle from where to experience life. So we each have a personal consciousness experience, which is essentially Source experiencing life from this perspective. Which perspective? The perspective you know. Because you are the Source having the experience. So it can dawn on us, that God that I'm looking for out there is actually that which is looking from right here. That God and what I am are not two. Self-realization. I a realization of the self that is running through the body, functioning through the body as the core of the human being. So then some notion of a God out there, when we realize, could it be that the consciousness of Source is what is functioning through me? So then, as we ground into that more and more, the idea of God as some philosophical or conceptual idea falls away, because we know ourselves more and more. And for all intents and purposes, like, who cares about God actually? All that's really important is to know that I am, because that's the resting place when we start finding that, or understanding that our happiness isn't to be found in outcomes. When outcomes happen, and it's unfortunate outcomes, and we drop back into our place of being, a place of being in connection to that awareness that is functioning through the body and resting in the heart where I know I am, then we essentially say, well, we know that that's where our peace comes from. So we're only really looking for God for one reason, because we think that finding God will give us happiness, or will give us something that we don't have that we need. So once we start grounding into our own I am and realize that that is the source of our peace, then really, to be honest, I have as much interest in meeting God as I do for meeting Madonna, or, well, Madonna is a confusing one, because, I mean Madonna the singer. Or give me someone else. Brad Pitt. Who cares? Like, I don't care about God.